Om Jnanatimarandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Svayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Svapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Jata Parakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatam Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakam Vitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostite Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Brindavanishwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Hari Priye Vanchakalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhyevacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Excuse me. Good morning, everybody. Welcome. Wonderful to see you here. As we continue our journey, we're just kind of following a path. We defined yoga in a simple way, and we're still just exploring that definition that we began with, which is that yoga is a practice which empowers one to overcome the obstacle of the mind for the purpose of the self experiencing their own true nature. And so within that, the obstacle of the mind lies the bondage of the self. It's the body and the mind. We're a spark of spiritual energy. We're trapped in a material body somehow. We deserve better. It's slowing us down. It's holding us down, and the mind is holding us down. And so it's the programming within the mind, which includes its identification with the mind and with the body, that keeps us, that keeps us trapped. And so we've spoken about the nature of the self, we've spoken about the mind, and now we're talking about the atmosphere that we're moving around with and how it affects the mind. Right? This is so important. Now consider something. Sometimes we hear about things like people that can read minds, or people that can affect someone's mind with their own. What do they call that? Is there a word for that? Mental? Telepathy means you can communicate, right? But to be able to mentally alter someone's mind, scary stuff. But imagine if we did live in a world where outside forces could work their way into your mind. And imagine if it could, adjust the focus and the intensity of your desires. I mean, imagine that. Imagine if it could play with your emotions. Imagine if it could affect the clarity of your perception. Some outside force entering into your mind. I have news for you all. We live in that world. According to the yogis, there are outside forces that enter into our mind and that adjust its clarity of perception, that adjust its focus and the intensity of our desires, and that play with our emotions. And we're entirely, generally ignorant of it and very susceptible to its power. And those forces are called the gunas, the three modes of material nature. And so if a yogi's goal is to try to gain control of the mind, well, then they really need to know what they're up against, what they're working against. And that's these three modes. So the bad news is we live in a world of mind control. Our minds are being affected by outside sources. The good news is that of the three outside forces that are playing with our inner landscape, one of them is favorable for yoga. One of them can help us become free. Are you ready to hear about the gunas?
Yes.
Okay. Now let's take a look over here at our screen. Interesting that this is up on a screen, because this kind of screen, I don't know. I know there's different kind of screens. I really don't even know what these things stand for, LCD or so on. But RGB means red, green, blue. And I'd imagine that perhaps even this very screen is an RGB color screen, which means that there are thousands and thousands and thousands. This screen, what this is made out of, is thousands of tiny pixels of light. And there's only three colors. If you picked one pixel, any one pixel from this screen, it would be one of these three colors. It'd be either red, green, or blue. Am I getting that right? People know about this kind of thing? Okay. So it's all made up of just three colors, but these three colors can blend in such ways to give us all the different colors. And they can also take different forms on the screen to represent any different kind of form. And that's what a video screen is. It's all just made up of three. What the yogis are saying is that there are three, that if you remember, if we go back, we said that that the way the yogis break down the world that we're living in, excuse me, is that they say that you could take the entire universe and divide into two categories of energy. The material energy, called in Sanskrit Prakriti, thank you, and the spiritual energy, which could be called Purusha. Right? So you have two categories of energy, Purusha and Prakriti. And then if you took the Prakriti, you could then divide that one category into three subcategories. And that would be Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, or these three gunas. Okay? And so what the yogis are saying is that essentially this universe is like a video screen made up of three elements. Essentially this universe has, although you could say there's all this material energy, but it falls into three different categories. And these three different energies, they blend to create unlimited forms. Every form that we connect with in this world is a blend of Sattva, Rajas, and Tamas, these three blending together to create a particular object, a particular form. Does that make sense? Okay, it's a little subtle, but stick with this video screen idea just to help us understand, okay, there's three and they're blending. Now, what they also say, and this becomes real important, is that every object is made of a blend of the three, but in every object, one of the three is predominant, right? One of the three is predominant. It's either primarily sattvic, and we're going to define these terms more in a moment, or it's primarily rajasic or primarily tamasic. And then this is the real important part, that whichever one of the three is prominent in that object radiates the particular influence of that one of the three. In other words, if an object is primarily sattvic, then the influence of sattva guna emanates from that object. And when we take that object in through the senses, when we see that object or hear that object, etc., then that influence enters through our senses and it begins to affect our mind. It begins to play with our mind. It influences our mind. Everybody with me so far? So the yogis are saying, I'm moving through an atmosphere where everything's radiating a particular type of influence. We could, I think, like in New Age speaking, people, they have an intuition or some understanding about this, but it's spoken about in vague terms. There's energies and so on. But the yogis are really clear about this. They'll tell us exactly what the influences are. There's 3 of them, and exactly how they affect us. And so Bhagavad Gita goes into a lot of detail about these gunas. They're mentioned a lot, and there's whole chapters, 14th chapter, 17th chapter, a good chunk of the 18th chapter, are just breakdowns, comparisons of different things and how they play out in the 3 different modes of material nature. But what we need to do to really clarify this conversation is we need to speak about the influence of the 3, and then it'll become more clear what we're talking about. But before we do, I just want to check in with everyone right now. Any questions about what we discussed so far? Is anyone just like, I have no idea what this guy's talking about? Because I could totally understand that, if you're unfamiliar with it. So let's take it step by step, okay? And why don't we read from Bhagavad Gita? Yeah, you can drop that. And there you go. Okay, text 5, let's go to. Can you blow it up a little bit? Yeah, a little more. Thank you. So material nature, right? That's the prakriti. All of the material energy consists of 3 modes: goodness, passion, and ignorance. When the eternal living entity, that's what's not made out of material energy, right? He's saying all the material energy is composed of 3 different modes. Then on the other side, you have the spiritual energy, the purusha. When the eternal living entity comes into contact with the material energy, with nature, with prakriti, Almighty Armed Arjuna, he becomes conditioned by these modes. He becomes affected by them. He becomes influenced by them. They seep into his psyche. Okay, text number 6. O sinless one, the mode of goodness, that's which one is that in Sanskrit? Sattva. It's the English translations there's just no English words to quite capture these. So we can say goodness, passion, and ignorance. It's about the best we can do. But we have to really learn what they are, and as it becomes more clear, we'll understand. So, O sinless one, the mode of goodness, sattva, being purer than the others, is illuminating, and it frees one from all sinful reactions. Those situated in that mode become conditioned by a sense of happiness and knowledge. Happiness. I think especially when we say happiness here, you can think in terms of contentment. When you think of sattva guna, think of contentment. I don't need anything more than what I have. I have what I need. Do you remember that we said that there are 2 essential qualities of the yogi? One of them was kindness, and the other one was simplicity, right? Simplicity means I'm content. I don't need a more complicated world. I realize that every time I want something more, it complicates my life, right? If the wise people can really see, there's an old story that goes around in the circles of the yogis. Maybe Sanatan has heard this one before. But they say there was a yogi that, they just, sometimes you'll see them here. They just live on the bank of the river. All he owns is his copins, just his you got some loincloth, right? That's all he has. He's got 2. You wear one and you wash the other and you hang it up. But then he found that like a little mouse was coming by and it was eating away at his loincloth. And he said, oh, I have a problem now, right? Let me get a cat, right? You know this one. Okay. So he says, let me get a cat, and the cat will keep the mice away. So he gets a cat, but then he realizes, well, now that I have a cat, I need to feed the cat, I need to give it milk. Let me get a cow, right? Now we need to take care of the cow. Now he gets married, he has to have a wife. Now he's married, now he has to have a job. Now you see how it's like, this is how things work. Every time we feel we need something more, it's not just the effort to get it, but it begins to complicate our lives in ways. And if we really look at the lives of most people, I live in New York City. It's a really complicated world, and every move that you make to try to improve your material situation is complicated, and it complicates things all the more. Relationships are complicated, jobs are complicated, getting money. I want to buy a car. Okay, how much does a car cost? Okay, I can afford that. But then what about the gas? What about the parking in New York City? Forget about it. It's crazy. The traffic, the maintenance, the insurance. And then you realize it's not so simple, right? It becomes, then you have to park, you know how you have to park a car in New York City? Unless you want to pay some astronomical parking rate. So now you could not imagine how much it costs to park a car in New York City. It's crazy. You could buy yourself a nice home. Like you could get yourself like a 4-bedroom apartment, like a luxurious one here in Rishikesh for what it costs just to park a car. And so what they do is they park it in the street, but they have these street cleaning rules. They clean the street every few days, and the cars can't be on one. So they clean one side of the street one day, and the other side another day. So you have to, on those days, you have to move your car. And so everybody, like every couple of days that parks their car, has to go out to their car, then wait for that street cleaner to come move, get out of the way, let it come around, and then park again. And it just gets, but then you have to work, and everything's complicated.
Like having a prince for a rent.
Like having a
Prince for a rent, and you have to cater all about the prince.
So yes. So you really become the servant of your desires, and you complicate your life. Sattva-guna means I don't need anything more. I'm really happy with just what I've got. I prefer to have a simple life. Sattva-guna. Right? So it's saying here, it conditions one to happiness and knowledge, and it's in that place, it's the place of contentment that our thinking becomes clear. And really try to understand this. It's more than, it does have to do with like when we're in a peaceful place, we can concentrate better. That's there, right? No question. But it's more than that. It's that our desires cloud our perception. When there's something that we want, when we're not satisfied and there's something external that we want, it begins to affect how we see things, right? We don't see things that others that don't have that desire can see. Sometimes somebody falls in love with somebody, right? And everybody's saying, this guy is not good for you, And the girl is saying, no, you don't understand. He loves me. And everyone's like, are you crazy? He's a criminal. He's a drug addict. He's gonna be, he just breaks hearts one after the other. He's like trouble. No, you don't see. And they're saying you don't see, but they're the ones that actually can't see because their desires are so strong in them that it's clouded the clarity of the perception. And we see this also, like you see this a lot nowadays. We live maybe right now in a particularly polarized world, like let's say politically it's polarized, and one side will, like for instance, they do these things that they go out in the street and they say, did you hear that this senator or the president or the person from the party that they're against has said this? And then they say, oh my God, that's outrageous, And they say, actually, it was the person from your party that said it. And they're like, well, and it's because we just see through this. We see through a filter, the filter of our own desires. But if our desires settle, if we're content with what we have, we don't feel we need anything else, then we can see much more clearly. We're not seeing through these desires. We can actually see truth. So when it says that the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, or let's say contentment, and knowledge, clarity of perception, seeing truth, unwarped by the filter of our desires. This is sattva-guna. This is powerful. This is where the yogi really needs to be, right? This is where, well, let's look at, in one sense, the opposite. The next one is the rajaguna. Now, we call this the mode of passion, but don't mistake it for thinking that it, like when we say passion, it doesn't mean that you feel strongly about something, or that you take a deep interest in something. Sometimes we say, well, music is my passion, or that we have a strong interest in it. That's not what it really means. Here by passion, what's really meant is the opposite of contentment. I don't have what I need. There's something that I need more of. I will not be happy until I achieve something or get something that I don't have. Things as they are right now are not sufficient. I need more. That is what Rajaguna is. Does that make sense? So you see, it's essentially the opposite of Sattva-guna. One is content, the other is discontent, right? So the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. That's really what it's about. I need something that I don't have, right? O son of Kunti, or Arjuna. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound to material fruitive actions. It's forcing me, the influence is forcing me to pursue more in the material world. And as I pursue more, life gets more complicated and I get more entangled, and the clarity of my perception becomes clouded by this, right? I don't see that I'm okay. When you really learn about the contrast between Sattva-guna and Rajaguna, you can begin to see it everywhere. And you can begin to see all of these. If you just went down like a list of issues that people in the Western world struggle with, they struggle with addiction, they struggle with problems with their relationships. You could just go down a whole list. It's essentially this Rajaguna, which is just pulling us into these cycles of discontent and cycles of complication. People overeat. Due to their overeating, they get different kind of diseases. They get heart disease, they get diabetes, they get all these things because they're wanting more than they need. If you ever see a sattvic person eat, see a real yogi eat, they don't, they'll say, just give me that much, right? It's like they'll have like a little bowl, and that's enough. Whatever fits in that bowl is what I'll eat. And they will be just as satisfied as anyone else. They're eating it a little bit more slowly, right? They're tasting it, actually. They've slowed down a little bit. They're not just stuffing it in and stuffing more in before they've even swallowed what they you watch people eat. It's like, it's kind of, we take a spoonful, put it in our mouth. We're still working on that, and we're digging down for the next one already. We're bringing it up before we've even swallowed that. A sattvic person, they can sit. They're not just operating on the sensual level. They kind of have more clarity. They're realizing, I'm doing this essential physical task right now of nourishing the body, and they do it one step at a time. They enjoy the taste as much as anyone else does. When they walk away from that experience, even though they ate less, they probably enjoyed it more, right? Because their mind isn't racing, their mind isn't racing. And so the mode of passion is born of unlimited desires and longings. And because of this, the embodied living entity is bound. We become bound in the complications of the pursuit of our desires. The clarity of our thought gets confused. It gets clouded. And it makes us always think that I can't be happy with what I have. We need the latest model, right? They come up with one model of something, car, computer, phone, and we feel like I won't be, and as soon as the next one comes out, when we get it, we think this is the greatest thing yet, right? And then when the next one comes out, we're like, oh no, I'm stuck with this. What seemed great is suddenly not great anymore. It still does everything it did before, but we're dissatisfied somehow now, and we won't be happy. And then we get in this long line because the new model has come out, right? So that we can be the first to get it, And then we get that, and how long does the satisfaction from that last? And so this is the mode of passion, right? It's got us thinking, I'm not satisfied with what I have. And this is crucial. Are you ready for this crucial point? Everybody ready? Yes. As long as you're not satisfied, then your attention will be drawn externally. You'll think, I will not be satisfied until I adjust the externals. I need to get something or change something, and then I'll be satisfied. But if you're not satisfied, you are focused on the external, you cannot go within. You can only go within when you're already satisfied with what's externally, how everything is externally. Does that make sense? Once you go, you meet these yogis. I just had a really nice opportunity just the other day where I went up into the forest here and met one sadhu. He lives in a cave. And he's got very little there. He's got his cave. In the cave, he has a log. He's got, a few blankets. And he sits and he meditates. Now, where most people are doing all kind of things to find satisfaction, he just goes Om and sits in silence and is satisfied, right? He gets a little bit of food every day. He's got no complicated diet there, no special delicacies, but he's just eating the simplest of things, right? But he has this peace of mind. He doesn't think I need something more. This cave is suitable, right? Is it cold in the winter? Yeah, but he's got a log, and he can light that thing up. And they're all over the place. He doesn't have to work very hard to get that. He knows how to keep that log just burning real slow, right? Just a little bit of it is like, it's cooking away, and it's going to last a long time. And that'll be enough that he can sit there and have a peaceful mind. Now, it's not that we all have to live in a cave, but we do all have to learn how to minimize our needs. Otherwise, we're always going to be pursuing the externals. That makes sense? So, sattva, contentment. Rajas, discontentment. And then tamas is a real mess, right? Tamas, let's go there. O son of Bharata, know that the mode of darkness, born of ignorance, is the delusion of all embodied living entities. The result of this mode are madness, indolence, and sleep, which bind the conditioned soul. Right? In other words, this is a really destructive mode. Things really fall apart in this mode. Things get dark in this mode. You can think a lot about, whereas sattva was I'm content, I'm clear. Rajas was I'm unclear and I'm working hard to get what I don't have. Tamas is like I'm lazy, right? Or I'm destructive, right? And this is really it's a scary mode. Where you see violence, you see almost always is coming in this tamaguna. If you were to go to any law enforcement agency, like in other words, visit any jail, you're going to find that, at least like say where I'm from, like say in America, that the majority of the people that are in there, they did something influenced by the tamaguna. Generally, they did it at night, which is the tamasic time of the day. Most commonly, it involves drugs or alcohol, which also are tamasic influences on the mind. And it's this that causes all the destruction, all the fighting, all these acts, all these criminal acts. Generally they're done in some intoxicated tamasic state at some tamasic time of the day. Right? I've been arrested before. I've been put in jail. Not for any of these kind of horrible things, I promise you. And everybody in there was in there because they were drunk and they got in a fight or they did something crazy while they were drunk. Go into a jail on any weekend in practically any city in America. That's what you find. Right? But not only that. Well, let's look at these three. What the yogis are saying is that everything that's composed out of material energy, again, is predominated by one, is made by a blend of all three, but is predominated by one, and the influence of that particular mode emanates from the object. And so when we come in its presence, its influence enters into our minds and influences our mind through the senses. Okay? And so that means every place, every sound, all the food that we eat, the people that we associate with, the music that we listen to, et cetera, everything is emanating a particular influence, right? So let's just consider, let's talk about places. If you were to pick a place that is sattvic, now what are the qualities of sattva guna again? Contentment, what else? Purity. Yes, goodness. Calm. Huh? Clarity, yeah. I think especially contentment and clarity, right? Contentment and lucid mind, lucid thought. So where is a place where that's predominant? Nature is one place. Yes. Any other places? Let's say like more like a human designed areas. Arts can be that way. Although, but arts, like you have sattvic arts, rajasic arts, tamasic arts, right? So yes, but even that, like say take classical music, like some of it is like really aggressive stuff. But I would think, how about, well, let me put it this way. If you needed lucid thought, if you needed a mind that could become very lucid because you had to contemplate a difficult to understand subject, where would you go? Okay, church, temple. What else? Okay. You people are all too spiritual. You go to a library, right? You got to study something. You go to a library. Yeah. But a temple or a church is also, in some sense, more ideal. But let's say I have a very difficult exam. Let's say it's on something very, very difficult to focus. It takes real mental focus to understand. Then we go to a library. When you go into a library, it's silent, right? And it's bright. It's lit up brightly. And it doesn't have like video screens, like pumping out all kind of visuals for it. That's for people that aren't satisfied, right? But when you step into the library, there's a certain contentment. I'm happy that it's quiet. I'm happy that it's well lit and silent. I'm happy that the table here has nothing on it, right? And I can sit there and take what I want to think of and place it on that empty table and focus, right? So it's got a sattvic environment. Now, what would you say would be a rajasic environment?
Coffee shop.
Sports games can be like that for sure.
Nice restaurant.
Coffee shop.
A nice restaurant, maybe. Coffee shop, you think?
Yeah, I mean,
Okay.
there's caffeine and
Oh, caffeine, yeah.
there's music and
When I try to think of the most stereotypical rajasic environment, I really have no personal experience with it, but I've seen it on television and in movies, is the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. You've all seen that before, right? Where like, I don't know what's going on. Honestly, there's these numbers are going around and they're yelling and saying sell. I don't know who's listening to them. They're sell, buy. It's like, who are they talking to? But the idea is that everybody in that room is discontent, right? Everybody in that room is convinced that there's an opportunity to make more money, and they're only going to be happier when they're making more money. Right? You understand? And they're kind of lost in it, They're kind of like making fools of themselves, being dragged by that material energy, convinced that I need more, I need more, I need more. Oh no, I thought I had more, now I got less. And they're going crazy. And anyone here work in finance? No, you're all too, look at you people. Bunch of yogis here. I don't know the world of finance, but from what I understand, let's say I had a job in some financial sector, and my superior came into my office, and they said, "What are the numbers for this past quarter? How are we doing?" And if I said something like this, I said, "We're down 37% from the previous quarter, but the good news is we all have all that we need." So we're all going to be okay. We actually have more than we need, so we're doing fine, right? Yeah, you'll get fired right on the spot. They want someone who's discontent, right? They want someone to say, we're doing 10% better than the last quarter, and I guarantee you it's going to go up, the following one, That's, what was it? Greed is good, right? This idea that always wanting more is a healthy state of mind. That's kind of what's preached in that world, which is really the opposite of sattva guna. And I want to be clear about this. A sattvic person isn't necessarily an inactive person. They're not necessarily just not doing anything in the world or not trying to change the world in a positive way. But the idea is their own personal needs are fulfilled. And therefore, they can actually have the strongest determination. Because a rajasic person, if they're not getting what they want, their determination wanes. Whereas a sattvic person, they're not doing it to fulfill some personal desire. They're doing it because it's the right thing to do. And therefore, whether things are going their way or not, their determination remains strong. It's not dependent on particular external results. So the sattvic person can be extremely powerful. They can move the world, but they're not moving it because they're discontent. They're moving it in service. Does that make sense? Okay. So we have a sattvic place in the library. We have a rajasic place in the floor of the New York Stock Exchange. Now, what's the tamasic place? Yeah, I think nightclub, bar, like that, right? Yeah. Yeah, it's kind of the opposite of the library. The library's quiet, the nightclub, and I don't know what you do in that place. You can't talk to anyone. It's like so loud. Whew. And the library is brightly lit. The nightclub, it's dark, right? If you want to go into a dark corner in there. And whereas in the library, everybody's they're valuing the clarity of the perception in that place. They don't want distractions because they want to fine tune, hone in the clarity of the perception. In the nightclub, pretty much everyone is intentionally clouding their perception through intoxicants. They're spending a lot of money on it too, right? They want to perceive less clearly. It helps them let go of their, people like to drink, and then what they'll do is they'll go out on the dance floor and feel more free, or they'll drink and they'll approach people sexually more freely than they would if they were sober. They need to let go of their inhibitions. The inhibitions are actually healthy. They prevent us from doing stupid things and making fools of ourselves. But they're thinking that happiness lies beyond those inhibitions, that they need something beyond those inhibitions. And so they drink. They feel, now I have an excuse to live outside the bounds of my inhibitions. I'm in a place where everybody's doing that. I'm in the condition where it's considered more acceptable or natural. And then they do all kind of stupid things that cause pain in their lives and pain in the lives of others. I grew up in New York, and it was a wild time when I was growing up. It was like the early 80s when I was a teenager, like 15 or 16 years old. And I could go into the bars, like in certain neighborhoods in New York as a 15-year-old. And when the bars closed, like at 1 o'clock or 2 o'clock in the morning, there are these after-hour clubs that you can go to. Now, what's the sattvic time of day?
3.
Yeah, early morning, just before sunrise this time. This is the yogis wake up early because they know mental clarity at this time. It's good for meditation, good for spiritual practice, right? What's the rajasic time of day? Yeah, midday. That's when everyone's going out and making the money, right? And the tamasic part of the day? Nighttime. That's when you're supposed to sleep, which is a tamasic activity. But I had friends in the summertime when we didn't have to go to school, they would live at night, right? They would go out at like maybe 8:30, 9 at night, go to the bars. After that, they go to the after hours clubs, right? You come out of the after hours club at 6 or 7 a.m. It's already morning, right? Then you go to a restaurant, you have breakfast, you get back home at 8 in the morning, you go to sleep, right? Then you wake up, so you go to sleep at 8 in the morning, you wake up, it's like 4 in the afternoon or something like that, right? And then you watch a little television, drag yourself out of bed, and then you go out again at night. And I tell you this from personal experience. My friends who got really caught up in that kind of nightlife, it always led to destruction, self-destruction, addiction, all kinds of problems, come from that lifestyle, right? It always leads to pain. It always leads to destruction. So whether it's a place, there's certain food that's sattvic, there's certain food that's rajasic, there's certain food that's tamasic, right? Certain food that you eat, you feel light and you can think clearly. Certain food you eat, you know what food they say is rajasic? Salty food. And think about it, right? When you go to the bars, what do they put out on the counter? They put like peanuts or pretzels, salty food, that you can't stop eating. You keep eating. If someone gives you a big bag of potato chips, the tendency is you just keep eating. You don't say like, I'll have 10 of them and then I'll be fine. You keep eating and keep eating and even when you don't feel good and it's not tasting good, you're just kind of stuck in it. And you're eating more and more and more and more. All right. So whether it's the food that we eat, the music that we listen to, the people that we associate with, the places that we go, all of them have their influence that is seeping in and affecting the clarity of our perception, right? Transcending the influence of the material energy. In other words, the yogis are recognizing this, and what are they doing? They're narrowing down their field of experience as far as possible into the sattva guna. They're going to make what is their living place going to be like? Ideally, it's going to be clean, right? It's going to be bright. It's going to be relatively quiet, right? And that's a place where their spiritual life can thrive, right? They seek out these areas, or they create these areas. The food that they eat, the music that they listen to, etc. They know how to create the environment that'll be helpful for their yoga, for their freedom. And they also know, as they move through the world, how to kind of insulate themselves from we can't always isolate ourselves. We can't all move out to a cave. But there's a way that we can kind of insulate ourselves as we move through the world and minimize the effects of the lower modes of the rajas and tamas on our awareness. And so the yogis go practically, well, let's go to the Yoga Sutras actually. Why don't we just read a few more verses here, just that'll get a little more clear. O Arjuna, the mode of goodness conditions one to happiness, right, contentment. Passion conditions one to fruit of action. I need more results. And ignorance covering one's knowledge binds one to madness. We see a lot of craziness, right? You go out at night in a city like New York. You go out at 1 o'clock in the morning on a Friday night, 3 o'clock in the morning. All you see is madness on the streets, right? You don't see so much just sober, clear thinking, sattvic kind of, it's almost all tamasic. Sometimes the mode of goodness becomes prominent, defeating the modes of passion and ignorance. Sometimes the mode of passion defeats goodness and ignorance, and other times ignorance defeats goodness and passion. In this way, there's always competition for supremacy. 11. The manifestation. Okay, so we'll stop there for now, but let's take a look at the Yoga Sutras. I'm going to take you to the last sutra of the Yoga Sutras. There you go. Yes, please. Oh, I think you got to scroll up. Yeah, like that way. I don't know if you all can read that, but this is the last of the Yoga Sutras. Ultimate liberation, the word here is kaivalya, right? Ultimate liberation is when the gunas, these three modes of material nature, devoid of any purpose for the purusha, for the person, return to their original latent state. In other words, when the power of consciousness is situated in its own essential nature. In other words, when you become so clear of who I am, You entirely disassociate yourself from the mind and body, which are composed of?
Matter.
What are the mind and body composed of? Matter. And what is matter composed of?
The gunas.
These three gunas, right? So when I'm completely disassociated with myself, when I entirely understand that my identity is beyond the body and the mind, beyond the modes of material nature, I can become free. And I can, even while I'm in this world, be unaffected by these modes of material nature. This is the kind of the perfection of yoga as being described here by Patanjali. Freedom from the influence of the three modes of material nature. Right? But that's not easy. It's not easy. So again, the yogi will move through this world in such a way where they're minimizing the effects of the lower modes and maximizing the potential in the mode of goodness. The yogis doesn't want to be merely situated in the mode of goodness, but they recognize that the mode of goodness, the sattva guna, is favorable for the yoga practice. The clarity of mind that it brings is favorable for contemplation on that which is beyond the modes. Right? So from the platform of sattva guna, you can connect your awareness to this full spiritual energy, whether it be in the form of a mantra, whether it be in the form of, say, like Krishna's form or name or qualities or leelas, pastimes. All of this is beyond the modes of material nature. Krishna's going to say, what is it, Daivihesha Gunamayi, Mama Maya Duratiya, that these three modes of material nature, they're my energies. They emanate from me. What is it? Mayeva ye prapajante, mayam titan tarantite. That these three modes of material nature are my energy. They're very difficult to overcome. But one who has surrendered unto me, they can easily pass beyond them. Right? Easily pass beyond them. This is the key for the bhakti yogi. It's other forms of yoga, they require incredible austerity. Not easy to live in a cave. Not easy to be content living in a cave. But through bhakti yoga, one can just meditate on the beautiful, charming, delightful form and pastimes of Krishna and names of Krishna, like we're doing here every evening. And if you come here at nighttime and you dance in the kirtan here, it's not ordinary music. It's not, those sounds are not the sounds of sattva, rajas, and tamas. They're actually called Shuddha Sattva. They're like beyond the modes of material nature. It's pure spiritual energy. It's an essential idea that there is energy out there beyond these three modes. And if we absorb our minds in it, we transcend the modes. And that's largely what the path of bhakti yoga is all about. We have a few minutes. Are there any thoughts or questions? Yes, David.
Is there anything to be said for the value in taking a yogic practice to those rajasic and tamasic atmospheres or environments?
The unique thing about bhakti yoga, and especially kirtan, there's very little value in trying to go and perform Ashtanga yoga in a nightclub. But you could actually bring kirtan into a nightclub. You actually could. So yes, there's value of bringing it anywhere you can. It's just you have to understand what will work where. But definitely there is. That's largely the way that bhakti was presented 500 years ago by Sri Chaitanya is to bring it everywhere. Somehow bring it everywhere. And when we're creative, we can find different ways and means to do that. Otherwise, you would have to go up to these mountains to find it.
You might know the yogi I'm referring to, but there's one who's known to have lived on a trash heap, and they said he smelled like a fresh breeze.
I'm not aware.
So, okay, well,
Yeah.
Yeah, that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Another question.
Thank you. Yeah.
When we talk about limiting our desires, does it come from outside in or inside out? Do we understand that we don't need anything internally and then remove things in the external, or do we remove the external and then become content with what we have?
Well, it can work both ways. And actually, there's many ways that it can work. But on one hand, internally, we want to contemplate our material desires and see them for what they are. And when one can do that, they can let them go. At the same time, if we put ourselves in an environment where there's less distraction, then it becomes favorable for it's a lot easier to let go of something that's not presenting itself right in front of you. But there's a third way, and this is really the way that the Bhakti yogis focus on, is that if it's not trying to kill desire, but it's trying to take all the desires out of the realm of the material energy and put them into the realm of the spiritual energy. And so when one develops this bhakti or this kind of devotional love, it's kind of like, just like in the material sense, when you fall in love with someone, you begin to forget about everything else. You let go of everything else. You let go of your other friends even, you let go of what you used to do. Those things that you really desired and really wanted, you let them go because you've tasted something higher. And so bhakti yoga is like that. It's like jnana and vairagya, knowledge and detachment, are within bhakti, because when one develops a full attachment to the spiritual love, then one easily lets go of everything within the material realm. So there's many ways and approaches to letting go of these desires. I think I need to end right now. I'm sorry, but I'll be outside. I humbly ask everyone not to approach me now so we can get out of the way for the Kirtan. Please stick around for Kirtan, and I'm happy to speak to people outside. And if you would like to hear the past classes or future classes, please speak to Gabriella. She'll be right outside and she can connect you. Thank you very much. Hari Om Tat Sat.